if each vote of those 150,000 shares was $10. Think about that, because Russell, this is 1917. There's another article somewhere where it specifically says that during this vote, Russell's shares were not used because he was dead. And so his shares were not in effect. So every single one of these 150,000 votes cost $10. That's $1.5 million. And they were all sold prior to 1914. That's in today's money. This is going to shock you because it shocked me. In today's money, that is the equivalent of about $50 million. Between only 600 attended. So even if we double that half of them couldn't attend the annual meeting. $50 million donated by that few of people. You because it shocked me. In today's money, that is the equivalent of about $50 million. Between only 600 attended. So even if we double that half of them couldn't attend the annual meeting. $50 million donated by that few of people. Those are some very, very wealthy people, like honestly. And my great-great-grandfather was very, very wealthy. And I learned all this information from his son, my great-grandfather. He was born in 1905, around then, and he lived well into his 90s, and he was alive during my entire childhood. I'm actually older than what I sound. And so he divulged, throughout the generations, they divulge that information. We know about that sort of thing. Because when you have to attend the annual meeting, you have to know what's going on. When you're from a shareholder family, you have to honestly know what's up so that you can vote effectively. And my great-grandfather made sure that I did. And because it was going to then eventually be passed down to me. So another dot that I want to connect is, let's see, in this, it's the November 1st, 1917 Watchtower. And it's at the very bottom. It says, the history and operations of our society. And it's a notice. It says, notice is hereby given that the annual meeting of the shareholders of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society will be held at Carnegie Hall in the city of Pennsylvania in Allegheny on the 5th day of January 1918 for the purpose of electing directors and officers and for the transaction of other business as may properly come before said meeting. And so it says it's the annual meeting. So the business meeting that they're talking about in the previous couple of articles, that's what they're talking about. So this is the connect another dot. And I want to thank Barbara Anderson for posting this on watchtowerdocuments.org. It's a November 15th, 1917 document called Facts for Shareholders. And this was sent out to families like mine. Facts for Shareholders for the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And on page 2, now remember, this is 1917. So every single member of the 1914 generation felt exactly how this article or how this paragraph reads. The first complete sentence right here. The Watchtower Society is not a religious society for public worship, such as a church, but is a business corporation. It's a business corporation. It says it's not for profit, but that's because all the profits were divided amongst these shareholders. They split it. So the company didn't make a profit, but the shareholders did. And the majority of shareholders would just reinvest. and then they would buy more shares. That's how they got to be the equivalent of $50 million worth of votes. By the time 1917 came about, they had reinvested and reinvested and reinvested every single year with their shareholder check. That's how it got to be so successful. And so it's not a church. The 1914 generation did not view Watchtower as a religion at all. Zero.
Hurry into Barbecues Galore and save a huge 20 to 50% off store-wide. That's 20 to 50% off barbecues and accessories and 20 to 50% off outdoor furniture. Don't miss our biggest sale of the year. That's 20 to 50% off store-wide, but only at Barbecues Galore.
Zero. Never did they view it as a religion. But members like my great-great-grandfather and grandfather wanted their subscribers to Watchtower to view them as special. They were going to rule over everyone as kings and priests, and you're going to be our earthly subjects, or however they viewed it. It was different back then about the paradise and that whole thing, which that's a whole other video. But they wanted to be revered for being these shareholders. That's why there's two classes. They were anointed because they were chosen by Russell as special, and they were shareholders. And they didn't view it like a religion. It says so right in 1917. You can't turn back time. And so I hope this opens people's eyes to what was really going on with Watchtower back then, who these original members are, and the ones running it are simply the descendants of the original families. They're the only ones who can be entrusted with the secrets, entrusted with writing on the writing department. That's why my dad was a researcher and my mom was a contributor to Watchtower, because those family members are the only ones who know the entire story, and they're not going to wake up because they're already awake, and they're willing to cover up for Watchtower's mistakes, one for financial gain, but also because they see it as covering up just for the mistakes of their descendants. It was Grandpa's mistake. And so we just need to cover it up and clear it up and make the members happy so that they'll continue to donate, so that they can continue to profit. It's simply a business. That's the way the governing body truly see it. The board of directors. There is a board of directors. It's the president and the vice president. And that's just the honest truth. And it's a shame, because all of these, there aren't that many original families left. That's why they changed it to the faithful and discreet slave are only the governing body, because basically that's just the governing body and their helpers, basically, is those are the only real descendants left anymore. And all the other anointed just don't realize what's really going on. And knowing how you're anointed, that's a whole other video. Like, let me tell you, that's a completely other video. I can't even go into it right now because the video is already 20 minutes long. But I'll do an extensive video about how that whole anointing works and who really is and who's not and all that. But basically, that's who's running Watchtower, is just the remnant of the original families, the remnant of the 1914 generation. And you'll hear Tony Morris basically brag from the platform that he's from a wealthy family. And all those original members, obviously, with the amount of money they donated, they were all from wealthy families. And so he makes it very, very obvious that that's exactly who he's from. And so take his word for it. When he says that he's from a wealthy family, well, yeah, he's from a shareholder family. And I'll go into Tony Morris a little bit more because my family, my parents in particular, were friends of his, and there's quite a few stories I can tell about him. But so that's basically who my family is. They're shareholders, and that's why I didn't want to talk about it right away, because I was scared, nervous about just saying certain things, because when you start to kind of blow the whistle on things where somebody else hasn't really blown the whistle, and when other people's pocketbooks are at stake, when they know that, oh, wait a second, their whole livelihood could be at jeopardy because one person is starting to talk, it can be quite serious. And so that's why I haven't said much in the last year. But now I'm finally ready, and I'm just going to have a whole series of videos talking about what it's like to find out about those secrets of Watchtower. I remember sitting with my great-grandfather, and he would sit in his wheelchair, and he would just reminisce about the old days, and he would divulge things, and he would tell things. And it was so interesting. It was like him telling war stories, because my grandfather, he would talk about World War II. And so I just loved sitting and listening to the both of them talk about that. And I just learned so much from the both of them. And so that's what I want to recount with you, is just telling my family's history and everything they witnessed in Watchtower, everything they saw, because my great-grandfather, being born an international Bible student in 1905, I mean, he saw everything. He experienced Russell. He knew the things that his own father had divulged about Watchtower to him, and the things that he saw and the people that he knew. And so stay tuned for that. And I'll just start at the very beginning and start to recount what really happened at the beginning of Watchtower and how it all came about and how it's the religion that it is today. Because it is really quite a story. It really is. Why there's two different classes, the whole reason for it, and just everything. I mean, honestly, the only reason why there's two classes is to distinguish between the shareholders and the non-shareholders. And in between, other people didn't understand that that's what that was, and so then they started to claim they were of the anointed as well, so it got a little confusing, but basically that's what it is. So if you've ever claimed to be of the anointed in Watchtower and you're not a shareholder, or from a shareholder family, I'm sorry, but Watchtower has never counted you as an anointed. The only ones who can count themselves truly as the anointed are if you're from an original family, an original shareholder family. So I hope that's not too disappointing for you, but I think you have a feeling that you already knew that. So anyway, that's it for now, and I will talk to you all later. This is Smurf Girl.
Awesome information, or what? Now we'll speak straight over to Eric Wilson of the Berea Pickett's channel, who's brought in James Penton to speak about the origins of the teachings of the Jehovah Witnesses. Here's Eric Wilson now.
About 40 years ago, I met James Penton. At the time, we were both Jehovah's Witnesses. He was a well-known elder, at the time living in Lethbridge, Alberta, had just written a book defending Jehovah's Witnesses in Canada, which met with widespread acclaim, especially among the intellectual community, university professors and the like. He is a historian and was a professor at the university teaching history for quite some time. Anyway, he was disfellowshipped shortly thereafter for apostasy, and at the time I thought that, like everyone else, because we were conditioned to think that way, that he had just become very proud and wanted to start his own religion. Of course, now I know differently. I know that pride has nothing to do with it, quite the opposite, because a proud person craves the status that you get by being a well-respected elder in the community of Jehovah's Witnesses. Getting shunned by everybody is hardly what a proud person seeks. Nevertheless, that is the fantasy that the organization promotes, so that they can hide the real truth. And of course, the real truth in his case was he had problems with 1975 and the fact that the organization tried to heap all of that onto the brothers and deny any real responsibility and refuse to apologize. And of course, there was also the question of the door-to-door witnessing, which at the time was disputed in the governing body. We only found out about that a long time afterwards, and which has no scriptural basis. All that aside, he was disfellowshipped, and I basically forgot about him. Then, of course, I woke up, realized the truth, and began to study the Bible for itself instead of through the publications. And as a result, also got disfellowshipped, appealed it, got disfellowshipped anyways, appealed it to the governing body, which you can do, by the way, and have not heard back from them. So officially, I'm still under review in the appeal process, although I'm sure to their minds I'm disfellowshipped. It doesn't really matter to me, of course, because I look at it the same way the apostles did when the highest court of the land threw them out, and they went rejoicing because they had been considered worthy of being dishonored as their master Jesus had been dishonored. So it is really a badge of honor to be disfellowshipped for standing up to what is right and true. So it does serve us to look into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, and recently James found me through the videos, contacted me. He only lives about an hour's drive away. He's 87 now, but his mind is as sharp as ever, and he wanted to help out with the work we're doing. Of course, his wealth of information from a historical perspective is something we want to take advantage of. And so this will be the first of a series of videos in which James will expound on the history leading up to the creation of the Witness movement. And it's really fascinating to go see how far back in history it goes, and to find out the real truth, not the one that is fabricated through the publications, but the real truth of all of those who went to contributing to the doctrinal and organizational framework that witnesses hold to today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce James Penton, who will begin by talking about the pre-Russell and Russell era.
Good morning. I'm Jim Penton, and I'm speaking here on behalf of Berean Pickets. I want to talk a little bit today about the origins of the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Bible student movement that preceded them. Now, I'm a historian, a professional historian. I have a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Iowa, and this is why the historical approach is so important to me. And I've written a number of books on Jehovah's Witnesses and their predecessors. And I want to talk about where some of the ideas that they have come from. Now, in the first place, it's often been said by people who are critical of Jehovah's Witnesses that all of the ideas that are worthwhile keeping from Jehovah's Witnesses, if you happen to be someone who has left that movement, as I have, all of the ideas that they have that are useful and biblical are based on ideas that they got from somewhere else, although they got a lot of ideas from other sources which were perhaps not that good either. But it's often said, all right, they have some ideas which are good ideas, but they also have some very bad ideas, and most of the bad ideas have been created by themselves. And I think that that's a real good starting point to use in talking about the ideology and the conceptions of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, first of all, everyone will recognize that they are millenarians. The idea that they're millenarians is the idea that they place a great deal of their thought and their ideology and their preaching on the millennium, which they believe is soon to occur right here on the earth. But besides that, they are also dispensationalists. And that means that they break down the history of mankind as they see it into various periods. And those periods, such as the period from Adam to after the flood, and right on down to Moses and the creation of the Mosaic law. That was one period. Then there's a period from that time to Christ, and then there is a new period or a third period. And where do they get these ideas from? Where do they get the ideas about the near approach of the millennium? Well, the answer is that they got it from a lot of sources, and it's generally supposed that most of those sources are with the various Adventist groups in the United States. And Jehovah's Witnesses and their predecessors, the Bible students, are often referred to as an Adventist sect.